Dr. Zettelmeyer, I'd like to thank you very much for participating in today's conference.
Sure. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
I'd like to ask you a question, if possible. If you were in the position of advising the Greek government in its debt restructuring right now, what would be the steps to be taken, and what would you recommend to avoid in terms of pitfalls and traps?
Yes, I think basically I would have 2 points. One is that the Greek government may be trying, or at least until very recently, may have tried to do too much in this debt restructuring. So if I understand it correctly, the objective was to do a restructuring that is both strictly voluntary, achieves a very large haircut on the debt, and achieves extremely high creditor participation. Now, as a matter of logic, I think one can show that you may be able to do 2 out of these 3, but not all 3. So this means particularly that if the government goes for a large haircut and for very high near full creditor participation, it will have a real problem because there will be a large group of short-term creditors who will have an incentive to hold out. And so I think that the only way of addressing that inconsistency is to move from the realm of the strictly voluntary into the realm of an orderly and creditor-friendly but involuntary debt restructuring. One of the ways in which it could be done, and I believe that is probably where the thinking goes, is to use Greek law to retrofit, if you like, a collective action clause on the existing Greek debt bonds, and that means that once you have agreed to a deal with the majority, you can then force the deal on holdouts. And in anticipation of this fact, I think the holdouts would not try to hold out. They would accept the debt exchange, and in the end you may not have to use these collective action clauses at all. So I think this is probably what should be the preferred course of action at this stage in the game. Very importantly, however, this is miles away from an expropriatory repudiation of the debt. So the important thing here is not to infer from the fact that we have crossed the threshold to involuntariness, once one is using Greek law to make changes to bond contracts, that one should now go all the way, that in some sense the reputation is ruined and one should go all the way to a complete write-down of the debt. That would unleash a wave of litigation. It would cut off Greece from international debt markets for as long as there is such litigation, and it may really create also problems within the EU. And so one wants to step back from that, and the important insight, I guess, is that in order to step back from that and go the other route, the involuntary route based on, a essentially bargaining power gained through a collective action clause, one still needs a deal with the majority of creditors. So there is no way around a negotiated solution in this sense, and the involuntary but orderly round, by implication, also imposes a limit to the extent to which these creditors can be squeezed, because if you squeeze them too much, they would at some point have an incentive to simply sell their debt to a distressed debt fund purely for the purposes of litigation. So I think there is room for maneuver for Greece. I think it's likely that a restructuring will be successful, that a deal with the majority will happen, and with the right legal tools that it will be then accepted by the holdouts. But it requires a lot of goodwill on both sides and a sense of enlightened interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much.